I'm going to be presenting about contemporary issues in football. I'm going to start off talking about gender and football in schools. From a young age, up to around the age of 16, males seem to have a much greater opportunity to play football than females, especially outside of school. It's also televised a lot more than women's football, which means it gets more exposure. But within school, they're required to provide equal opportunity for both boys and girls to play. An example of boys having more opportunity is the FLT Futsal League, which is participated by multiple professional clubs from around the country. However, it only runs a men's league. There's no current women's league, meaning women have no opportunity to take part. Also, officials within the sport mainly tend to be male. The first female assistant referee, named Sean Macy, running the line in the Premier League as recently as 2010. Sky Sports pundit Andy Gray was fired for sexist remarks he made live on air, believing his mic was turned off, as he stated that female assistants don't know the offside rule. The short-term effects of this are that an increasing number of women participate during school schemes, which means temporarily the number.
This is a staff announcement. Can Jacob come to reception, please? That's Jacob to reception.
However, once they leave school, they don't have the same opportunities to play, so the number then drops. Also, it can affect government funding to help fund initiatives and things to help get more women involved. And finally, it can increase the popularity of the sport because it will get more exposure as the female game becomes larger. Long-term effects are it causes the men's game to just become more and more dominant as they get far more coverage. The number of women who participate drops due to there being no available opportunities for them to play. It could also cause kit and equipment manufacturers such as Nike and Adidas to increase their sales, as if the popularity of the women's game increases, they'll have to release new lines of sports gear. Now I'm going to talk about drugs. Drugs have a massive influence on football. An example would be Diego Maradona. He accomplished many things in his career and has since admitted that they were done under the influence of cocaine. This will have enhanced his performance and allowed him to achieve things he otherwise may not have been able to. Nowadays, they perform regular drug tests on players to make sure they aren't using performance-enhancing drugs. A recent example of someone who's caught by this is Rio Ferdinand, who was banned for 8 months in 2003. The process doesn't always work correctly, however, as in 2011, Colo Torre was mistakenly banned for taking drugs when it was actually weight loss tablets he was taking. The short-term effects of this are that the drugs temporarily increase the player's performance, which could lead to things like transfers to larger teams as they're playing well. It gives negative media coverage to the individual and the sport, as no one wants drugs to be linked with their sport. It can affect the results of matches, as if it's increasing the performance of one player, they could change the game. It can cause the player to have a loss of respect and sponsorship, which could have knock-on effects to their life outside of football. And it could result in the player being fired if it's a repeat offence. Similar is for long-term effects, but they just happen over multiple uses. It can also have a negative effect on young viewers who may think, if they see their idols doing this, they may think it's alright for themselves to take drugs to play better. Finally, it could cause the club that they play for to lose money as well, in things such as shirt sales, wages that they have to pay for a player who can't perform. I'll talk about religion and racism. Football has come from all different countries and ethnicities and races nowadays. And some clubs, such as Notts County, have run a scheme called Kick Out Racism. This is a scheme which is aimed at removing racism from football at grassroots level, so when it gets to the top elite levels, there's no racism in there. An example of racism in sport was between Luis Suarez and Patrice Evra on the 15th of October 2015. Suarez was subsequently banned for 8 games as a result of his racist remarks. This can then lead to further things, as when they played each other again they refused to shake hands. This leads to negative press for the sport. Short-term effects are negative media exposure for the sport, as they don't want to be associated with racism. Sets a bad example for young viewers, whether they play the sport or not. If they see people that they look up to being racist, they might feel it's all right to do it themselves. The player can get banned, meaning he'll miss games and affect his team's performance. It can also cause the club to lose money, as they may have to play behind closed doors if it happens too many times. And finally, it can, in extreme cases, it can lead to threats from the public, threats to the player if they're being too over the top of it. Long-term effects are that it could cost the player future sponsors, as they may not, companies which would sponsor him may not want to be associated with someone who's a known racist. It could cause the player to lose followers/fans, which could have a knock-on effect to his life, again, costing him things such as sponsorship deals. It could lead to a club being disliked or abused by fans of other teams if they keep the player. The player will lose their status as an idol, meaning people will look up to them less. It could also cost the player future opportunities and for contracts and jobs if it's a repeat offence. I'll talk about deviance. It involves things such as match fixing, diving and anti-crime. Many teams and players use deviant tactics to gain an advantage over their opponent. A match fixing example occurred in the Serie A recently, and it involved Juventus, Lazio and Fiorentina. His punishment received for match fixing was demotion to the second division. Diving is a tactic used by many players in an attempt to cheat their way to being awarded a free kick by the referee to gain an advantage in the game. Known divers are players such as Neymar, Bale, Sergio Busquets. Anti-crime involves keeping players away from crime and criminal activity off the pitch. An example of a player being involved in crime is Jermaine Pennant, who had to play a few games wearing a tag on his ankle because he was on probation. The short-term effect of this, negative media exposure for the sport, as they don't want to be associated with criminals, and also negative exposure for the player themselves. They set a bad example for young viewers, and it could lead to a loss of respect if it keeps happening over and over again. Long-term effects are, it could cost the player future sponsors and cause them to lose followers/fans, which could go towards them losing sponsorship. It can lead to the club again being disliked because of this player playing for them. They can also lose future contract opportunities and future jobs from other teams if they repeat offend. Now I'll talk about politics and health initiatives. Politics is key within football. The reason is because if football doesn't receive sufficient funding, and certain programmes which are run for the community may have to be abandoned due to funding issues, it may even lead to some smaller clubs having to fold or go into administration. An example of that would be Rangers, who recently got demoted down for going into administration. Some government-funded programmes are football in the community, let's kick racism out of football, on the ball, kicks and disability. These programmes are designed to help get people involved in football that otherwise wouldn't be involved, and get people with things such as hearing disabilities to get involved with the game. It's also designed to help keep young people off the streets. Health initiatives are programmes specifically aimed at getting young people off the streets. An example of this is the Motivate programme. Short-term effects are they get people off the street. This can help reduce trouble in any given area, reduce crime rates, things like that. Brings more people to the game of football, which as a result increases its popularity, cause clubs or programmes to fold if they don't receive sufficient funding. And if the funding is cut and the programme or club has to fold, it will mean that jobs are lost and more people being unemployed. Long-term effects are increases the club's reputation throughout the community. They're known to be helping. Gives positive press for the clubs involved in these programmes, which means they get better exposure, they might get better sponsorship deals from companies. Produce more jobs if the funding remains steady over an extended period, as they may be able to put more programmes of a similar style on to get more people involved. And increase the health of the community, as people who otherwise might not have availability to a regular place to go and do exercise that they find fun will get involved